I was 600 miles into the desert when the girl appeared on the shoulder, barefoot, soaked in blood, and holding a highway flare like it was the only thing keeping her alive. I've been a trucker for 20 years, driven through hurricanes, riots, and ghost towns. But I swear to God, I've never seen eyes like hers. Eyes that knew my name before I even rolled down the window. She said one sentence, just one, and it changed everything I thought I knew about this road, about what I was hauling, about who was really watching from the dark. You think you've heard trucker stories before? Not this one. Stay with me, and I'll tell you what really happened that night on Interstate 40. Hit that follow, drop a like, and don't blink. Because the truth's coming, and it's not stopping for anyone. The interstate at night is a long, humming wire. Touch it wrong, and it sings. West Texas had baked all day, and now the heat lifted off the asphalt like a mirage going home late. Jack Mercer kept his tractor steady and his mind even steadier, letting the big diesel breathe in a slow, patient rhythm. He was in his early 40s, the kind of man the road polishes instead of wearing down. Quiet jaw, calm hands, eyes that knew how to measure distance, without looking like they cared. Inside the cab, it smelled like old coffee, clean oil, and rain that hadn't quite arrived. The dash threw a dim halo over a cab trimmed with lived-in order. Logbook tucked in the door pocket, a battered flashlight within reach, a small pocket knife on the mirror chain that had belonged to his father back when men thought a blade and a promise were enough to name you honest. In the plastic tray behind the seat clinked stray bolts, a hex key, a thumb drive that hadn't played anything in years. On the passenger shelf, a photo of a kid in a faded baseball cap was wedged under a rubber band. Jack's boy, a Marine now, too far west for casual visits, old enough to say, "I'm fine, Dad," and mean both everything and nothing. The radio on 19 hissed and spat the eternal chorus of road ghosts. A convoy out of Laredo traded warnings about a trooper camping near a way station. Somebody with a Louisiana drawl swore a story about a buck that tried to outrun a tanker and almost won. Over them all rolled a voice Jack knew. Mouthpiece Mike, a motor mouth from Abilene whose laugh carried like a stick tossed down whitewater. Breaker 19, how about you, Limestone? You still rollin' east or you park it, buddy? Jack thumbed the mic. Still rolling, Mouthpiece. Gonna push through past Midland, see if the sky decides to be kind. Kind? In Texas? Son, that sky's got a temper. Mike shot back. Heads up, DPS is thick as gnats round the big spring scale. Keep it polite. 10-4, Jack said, and let the channel go. His rule with talking had always been the same as with steering. Be smooth, keep enough distance to brake. It wasn't that he disliked people. He just liked the hum that happens when you let tires ride a line no one else can see. The hum gave him back the parts of himself crowded out by daylight. His father's simple advice, the way a promise ought to sit in your mouth like a coin you won't spend. The one memory he avoided most nights until it came and sat anyway. Rain. A shoulder outside Knoxville. A man waving, not drunk, not unsteady, just soaked and small under a broken umbrella. Jack's trailer had been heavy, the hour late, the delivery window mean and narrow. He had rolled on. In the morning, a talk radio host mentioned a body found under an overpass and moved on to a college ball score. The world did not pause. Jack's sleep did. He didn't tell anyone about that night. Not the woman he had married young and parted from without fireworks. Not the boy who thought his father knew more than he did. Sometimes, when he shut the engine and the silence rose like a tide, the Knoxville shoulder took a chair inside his chest and waited. On those nights, he tightened his hands on the wheel as if he could tow the earth back a mile and try again. Lightning pulsed far off to the north like a heart deciding. Jack eased into a long curve, and the road spilled forward in fresh black. The sign for a Love's appeared and slid by, yellow against dark, a little island flipping its porch light at him. He told himself he'd stop the next one, stretch his legs, see if the coffee on this stretch of interstate had forgiven humanity. He told himself a lot of things. The engine fed him a lower note as a headwind met the grill. The wipers dragged once dry and stilled. When the first drops came, they were polite, round taps on metal. The kind of rain that made Texas smell like cedar and pennies. Jack rode it down the grade, feeling the weight settle, feeling his shoulders settle with it. The sky cracked open wider in the glass, and headlights coming the other way smeared across that wet like fire on foil. He reached for the radio mic again without knowing why, just a muscle remembering. "You still on me, mouthpiece?" "Always and never, limestone." The answer came, bright as a grin. "What's your 50? "Between Odessa and a better idea." "Copy that." You watch them 2 lanes where they hop off to shortcut. Boys out here think their daddy paved them himself. 10-4. He set the mic down and almost missed the first flicker. It wasn't much, just a pale shiver in the median, like a mirror catching someone else's memory. He leaned forward a fraction, the way a man leans when he wants a future to explain itself. The flicker was gone, and the rain slurred a little heavier. He breathed in, slow, told his neck not to knot, told the old guilt to sit still. Then the road threw something white straight into his beams. A figure, thin, bare legs streaked with mud, arms windmilling in the stuttered, frantic honesty of someone whose choice is between being seen and being erased. She stood so close to the fog line, he tasted the brass of his own fear. He planted his boot on the brake hard enough to feel the trailer push, not hard enough to make it misbehave, and let the truck bow like a big animal taught to stop without knowing why. The air hissed around him as the air system dumped like a long sigh, and the truck came to a scouring still. She was already moving. She grabbed the passenger handle, yanked, then struck the door with the flat of her palm like a heartbeat. "Please," she said to the glass. "Please, he's coming." Her voice wasn't a scream. It was a struck match, small and bright, carried by wind. Jack popped the lock and the door swung heavy on its hinge. She hauled herself in with the ragged grace of someone who remembers climbing fences from a childhood she does not miss. The door thumped shut, and the cab shrank, as if the air had been a size too big a moment ago and now fit right. "What happened?" Jack asked. And the question came out calm because the part of him that was panic rode somewhere behind his ribcage and grew quiet in a storm. "Drive," she said. "Please, just drive." She was young and not. Face drawn tight from hours that age you, eyes fever bright, hair stuck wet against her forehead. Someone else's hoodie swallowed her, sleeves too long, the hem soaked up to her thighs. There was blood at her knee, not gushing, the kind of scrape you earn outrunning a bad idea. Her feet were bare, toes white, a ring of road dust like a wedding band she'd never asked for. Jack gave the truck a gentle throttle and merged back onto the black seam, checking mirrors because he had learned to check mirrors in this life before checking hope. The interstate accepted them again, as if they were a story it had been holding a finger in the middle of. The girl pushed herself into the seat, buckled with hands that trembled and then stopped, and stared into the side mirror as though she had to stay the witness to something he could not yet name. "Seatbelt," he said, "because rules are what keep a man steady when everything else is not. Keep your head down if I tell you, and if I tell. If you're hurt worse than it looks, you gotta say." I'm fine, she said, which meant what it usually meant. Name? He asked, keeping his voice low the way you talk to spooked horses. Katie, she said after a breath. Just Katie. I'm Jack. She nodded like a person agrees to weather. The wipers found a lazy rhythm. Rain thickened, then let up. Mike's voice burred on 19, then faded to someone else's complaint about steer tires. Jack let the road stay loud so his thoughts could stay quiet. After a while, he asked, You got somewhere you're trying to be? Away, she said. Just away. You running from trouble or through it? She flinched barely, a finger of muscle in her cheek. Does it matter? I gotta know how to hold the wheel. Silence. The kind that grows walls inside a cab. She broke it before it cut her mouth. He's behind me, she said. He doesn't like losing. That a boyfriend, kind of he? She shook her head once. No. Jack let the engine talk for him a mile or two. You got ID? No. Phone? It's gone. He nodded as if those answers were all he'd expected. Okay. We'll do this the plain way then. He adjusted the fan. Warm air licked the edges of their damp. The interstate taste shifted to wet mesquite and diesel. Through the glass, America kept going. Dark billboards and ranch fences and a church sign promising mercy next right. Jack had always believed the promises signs made on highways, gas, food, shoulder repairs. Because at midnight, a driver sells himself gentler truths. He glanced at the mirror and saw nothing but his own 2 lamps, caught and sent back. Still, the hair at the base of his neck paid attention. Cold? He asked. A little. He thumbed the heat up another notch. There's a towel behind the seat, clean as a truck towel gets. She twisted, found it, rubbed her calves, then folded the towel and pressed it between her hands like a book you pick back up out of habit. When she faced forward again, her stare had lost its glaze. She was still tracking the mirror with part of her eyes, but the rest of her had returned to the room. You shouldn't have stopped, she said, which didn't sound like a thank you and wasn't a complaint either. It was more like a warning made of leftover breath. I've done the other thing, Jack said. Didn't like the way it slept. The rain picked up, the wipers worked, and the truck felt for grip and then settled into it. A sign promised a truck stop in 15 miles, and Jack thought of cheap eggs and a lighted canopy and a room of men who could be counted on to mind their own business until they couldn't. He put his blinker on and then took it off again. Katie saw the indecision flash and tensed. Don't stop. Not yet. You see something I don't? He's good at finding me, she said. Then, smaller. Them. Jack adjusted his mirrors by a hair, a gesture that let him think while he pretended he was doing something practical. You two told a bell together, or you just owe someone a song? She let out a sound that might have been a laugh if it weren't so tired. You talk pretty for a truck driver. I've had a lot of radios to practice with. She kept her hands wrapped in the towel. The heater fogged the lower corners of the glass. Off to their right, a little white church in a cotton field wore a constellation of porch bulbs that told the night it would not succeed. Jack almost asked her what had driven her onto the shoulder, into the rain, barefoot, with a voice like a struck match. He didn't. The part of him that knew stories knew not to ask for all of it in the first mile. If he tugged that thread too hard, the cloth would come apart and leave them both sitting with scraps. Got someone you trust? He asked instead. An aunt in Amarillo, a friend in Fort Worth, anyone whose porch light would stay on without questions? She chewed her lower lip, eyes fixed on the place where highway became a guess. Maybe, she said. But there are phones there. Phones everywhere, Jack said. That's the trick. She nodded, as if that settled something and settled nothing. They rode another stretch in the kind of quiet that belongs to miles and men who earn them. When his knuckles eased and her shoulders lowered out of her ears, he tried the radio again. Breaker 19, y'all got weather on 20 headed east from Odessa? Static. Then someone came back with a forecast that was really a prayer. Wet, slick on the bridges. DPS is snacking on speed the way my auntie eats watermelon. Slow your roll. Appreciate it, Jack said. Katie's gaze ticked to the mic. You all know each other? Only by the parts we put on the air, he said. I got a buddy calls himself Mouthpiece. Talks enough for a choir. You tell him about me? Not unless you want me to. Jack felt the thought of saying her name out loud in the radio world. How that would turn her into a story someone else could own. He kept the mic where it was. She shook her head. Not yet. A green sign slid by with the name of a town that sounded like a joke, and a mileage that would have been a simple number if you were counting with your eyes. Jack noticed himself translating out of habit. Miles into minutes, minutes into coffee, coffee into the way his hands felt on the wheel. He had never liked clocks. He trusted engines. The rain shifted to a steady lace. He tasted metal and something like cedar smoke. He checked the side mirror out of instinct again, and this time the dark ahead of their taillights disagreed with him. A pair of low lamps winked on in the mid-distance, not hurrying, not shy. They held where he held, grew when he grew smaller. When he eased to let a tanker pass, they eased too, patient as a hunter who knows the land. He said nothing. He let the knowledge sit with the Knoxville memory and the feel of his boy's hand on a summer afternoon back when a baseball could measure a season. He let it sit because panic makes bad maps. He took another long mile to be sure, and the lamps kept faith with his doubt. Katie, he said, quiet. Do me a favor. Reach under the seat. There's a little strap. Tug it. See if you find a first aid kit and an old sweatshirt. She bent, fingers searching, shoulder pressing into the passenger door as rain thudded its soft drum on the roof. Got it, she said, voice muffled, and came up with a red plastic box and a gray hoodie that had seen a better decade. Put the hoodie on, he said. Seat back a notch. If I tell you to slide down, you slide. The lamps behind them grew a whisper closer, then held. Not a trooper pattern, not a trucker's lamp. Jack felt the road narrow a fraction in his mind, and the way it does when a man admits he might be in a story he didn't choose. Jack? She asked, fingers in the sleeves. The hoodie swallowed her, and she took some comfort in being held by anything soft. Is that him? Could be just another poor soul who likes the same speed I like, Jack said. Could be a man who thinks the night owes him something. Either way, we keep it steady. What if he pulls alongside? Then we let him look and give him nothing to see. The lamps held. The rain lightened. Somewhere far off, the lightning finally made up its mind and stitched a white vein across a corner of sky. Jack kept the lane. He kept the radio quiet, his mouth quieter, and the engine loud enough to carry them. Why'd you stop? Katie asked suddenly. Not a challenge. A riddle she couldn't help setting on the table between them. Men don't stop anymore. I've been the man who didn't, he said. Been him enough for a lifetime. She watched him like you watch a bridge you're about to trust with your car. She nodded once, like a vow she could keep tonight. Then I'm glad you found me. He didn't say he hadn't been the one doing the finding. He didn't say the road had a way of putting you where your dues came due. He kept the truck inside its white lines and waited for the rain to decide whose side it was on. The lamps behind them flinched a fraction, like teeth in a smile. Jack took his foot off the throttle a breath. Let the weight of the trailer steady the tractor. Let the world roll forward on its own. He could feel a choice standing up just over the next rise, like a man stepping into the beam. He rode for it anyway. The rain thinned to a mist, the kind that makes headlights bloom like ghosts. Jack kept his speed steady, fingers loose on the wheel. The dark ribbon of the interstate stretched ahead, and the pair of headlights behind him stayed the same polite distance. Too steady to be random, too patient to be casual, he'd seen tailing before. Years back, a sheriff's cruiser had shadowed him through 3 counties, waiting for him to blink wrong. This wasn't law enforcement. No spotlights, no bar lights on the dash. Just 2 low lamps, half a mile back, matching his pace like a song echoing itself. Katie had stopped breathing loud. He could hear the way she was trying to be small. "You ever drive through New Mexico?" he asked, his voice easy, soft enough to sound like small talk. She blinked, pulled from her dread. "Once. With..." She stopped herself. "Yeah, once." "Good place to disappear," he said. "Wide country. Sky big enough to swallow whatever chases you." She hugged the hoodie tighter. "You think that's what I should do?" "I think it's what you're already trying." He checked the mirror again. The lamps behind them blinked out. For one stretch of highway, there was only the rain whispering and the low thunder of tires on wet pavement. Then, there they were again. Closer. Katie saw it too. "That's him," she whispered. "That's him, Jack." He didn't ask how she knew. You can tell when someone's fear stops being about imagination. "All right," he said. "Hold tight." The Freightliner's engine gave a deeper growl as Jack dropped a gear and guided them onto the next exit ramp. The asphalt curved left, up toward a lonely cluster of sodium lamps and a rusted sign that read, "Rest Area, 1 mile." Katie gripped the seat edge. "What are you doing?" "Seeing if he wants the same exit I do." He coasted through the curve. The headlights followed. Jack exhaled once, through his nose. "Guess that answers that." The rest stop appeared. A small concrete restroom block, 2 vending machines humming under flickering light, and an empty row of parking slots painted long ago by men who didn't expect company after midnight. He eased the truck in slow rolling past the building. His trailer's red lights painted the wet asphalt in rippling color. Behind them, the car turned in too, keeping distance. "Stay low," Jack said quietly. "Don't open that door unless I tell you." Katie obeyed, her silhouette folded against the dashboard, trembling. Jack flipped off his headlights, let the engine idle low. The other vehicle, a dark SUV, rolled to a stop 50 yards back. Its engine stayed running. The driver didn't get out. He waited. The rain ticked on the roof, 100 seconds long enough to measure your pulse. Jack opened the glove box and pulled out a small maglite and a crescent wrench. Not a weapon, exactly, but heavy enough to make a man reconsider his plans. The SUV's door opened. A tall figure stepped out, head bare, shoulders squared. The way he moved told Jack 2 things. The man had done this kind of thing before, and he expected to finish it the same way. Jack cracked his window. "Don't," Katie hissed. "Relax," he said. "We're just saying hello." The man walked closer, slow, hands loose at his sides. Rain glossed his jacket, turning him into a shadow with bones. Jack called out through the gap. "You lost, friend?" The stranger stopped 20 feet from the hood, squinting into the cab's darkness. His voice was smooth, polite. Evening. You seen a girl out here? Barefoot, maybe hurt? Ran off about 20 minutes ago. Jack kept his tone flat. Ain't seen anyone like that. You sure she's not just trying to get away from you? The man smiled, thin and sharp. She's confused. She's not thinking straight. I just want to get her home safe. Katie made a sound then, small but enough for the man to hear. His smile widened. Jack cursed under his breath. You picked the wrong truck, pal. Time to go. The stranger took a step forward. That's her, isn't it? You have no idea what you're doing. Buddy, Jack said, lifting the wrench where the cab light caught it. You take one more step, and I'll show you exactly what I'm doing. The man's expression didn't change. Rain slid off his cheekbones, his eyes bright and cold. Then, slowly, he stepped back. All right, he said. You're the good guy. Be careful who you help, hero. Sometimes they bite. He turned, walked back to his SUV, climbed in. The vehicle reversed, then pulled onto the ramp, tires spraying water as it rejoined the interstate. Jack waited until the taillights were swallowed by dark. Then he breathed again. Katie was shaking. That was him. That was one of them. How many? She hesitated. 3. Maybe 4. Her voice cracked. They took me from a diner outside Abilene. I thought I was catching a ride to Amarillo. They said they were going that way. They weren't. Jack's hand tightened on the wheel. You escape? She nodded, small and slow. When they stopped for gas, I ran. I thought, if I could just reach the highway, someone would stop. He looked at her. The blood on her knee had dried dark. The hoodie swallowed her whole, sleeves hanging like broken wings. You got a place you trust? My sister, she's in Denver. That's north. I don't care how far, I just can't go back. He nodded. Then that's where we'll go. Katie blinked, startled. You'd take me? I got nothing but miles, kid, he said. Might as well make 'em count. Outside, thunder rolled low over the plains. Jack put the truck in gear, pulling back onto the ramp, his lights cutting through the thin veil of rain. He didn't look back again. But in the mirror, for a heartbeat, the reflection of the SUV's headlights flared once, far off at the edge of sight, before vanishing for good. Jack exhaled. Denver, then, he murmured. Katie nodded, eyes glassy. Denver. The freight liner found its rhythm again, big and steady and stubborn. The storm followed them west, whispering against the windshield like it wanted to tell the rest of the story first. The sky was paling at the edges, the kind of thin gray that meant dawn was sneaking up whether anyone wanted it or not. The highway ran straight north, out of Texas and toward the high plains. Every few miles, a sign reminded Jack how far he was from places he'd never meant to visit. Lubbock, Amarillo, Dalhart. Denver was still a whisper past the horizon, but the direction was right. Sometimes that was enough. Katie had fallen asleep curled against the passenger door, hoodie zipped to her chin, hair drying in uneven strands. She'd slept in fits, jerking awake at every sudden sound, then sliding back under when she realized the world wasn't ending, yet. Jack had seen soldiers sleep like that. His own boy came back from the Corps with that same half-alert stillness, like rest was a dangerous thing you earned in small bites. The CB was quiet. The road wasn't. Semis hissed by, their tires spraying up ghosts of rain. Jack's coffee had gone bitter and thin, but he didn't mind. He wasn't tired in the body. It was the kind of fatigue that crawls behind your ribs and waits. He thought about turning her over to the police back in Odessa. But that man at the rest stop, he'd looked too clean, too certain. The way he said, "She's confused," had rubbed something wrong, like a nail on bone. Jack trusted his gut more than any badge these days. When Katie stirred, sunlight was beginning to break through the clouds, soft, white, and tired, just like them. "Where are we?" she murmured. "North of Amarillo, coming up on the Panhandle line." She rubbed her eyes, winced. "You been driving all night?" He shrugged. "Done worse." Katie shifted, looking out at the endless plains. "I don't even know what day it is." "Thursday," he said. "I think." She gave a small, incredulous laugh. "Feels like a lifetime since Tuesday." Jack nodded. "That's what running does. Stretches time till it stops making sense." They drove in silence a while longer. The windmills began to appear, long white arms cutting slow circles in the sky. Somewhere to the west, a train moaned, carrying somebody else's story. Finally, Katie asked, "You got a family?" Jack kept his eyes on the road. "Had one. Got a son out in California, Marine. Doesn't need his old man much anymore." "You talk to him?" "When the cell towers feel generous," he said with a small smile. "He's stationed near San Diego. Sends me pictures sometimes. Ocean, his buddies, a dog that ain't his. I tell him I'm proud. I am." Katie watched him. "He knows you drive trucks? Knows I live on the road. Doesn't know it's because I can't stand to stay still." "Why not?" Jack hesitated. "Still places have memories. Roads don't." Katie leaned back, looking out at the horizon. "You sound like someone running from something, too." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. They passed through Dalhart around midday. Jack pulled into a gas station, one of those half-forgotten stops with a single pump and a faded icebox humming out front. He topped off the diesel, bought a couple of sandwiches and 2 coffees that smelled like burnt rubber, and came back to the cab. Katie was watching the road behind them through the side mirror. "Anything?" he asked. She shook her head. "Just making sure." He handed her a sandwich. "Eat. You'll feel human again." She peeled back the wrapper, sniffed it like it might bite. "Tuna?" Closest thing they had to food. They ate in silence. Trucks came and went. A stray dog wandered across the lot, sniffing at the trash can. "Jack," Katie said after a while. "Yeah? If we make it to Denver, what then?" He took a slow sip of coffee, thinking. "You got someone there you trust?" "My sister, like I said. But I haven't seen her in 2 years. We weren't talking much when I left." "She know what happened?" Katie's fingers tightened around her paper cup. "No, and I don't want her to. I just want to be somewhere he can't find me." Jack nodded slowly. "Then we'll make sure of that." He glanced again at the mirror. No SUV, no shadows, just open highway. "Listen," he said. "You should know something about men like him. If he's what I think he is, he's not traveling alone. The others, maybe they're a crew, maybe worse. Either way, they've got money, reach, and no shortage of bad ideas. You ready for that?" Katie stared at her lap. "I was ready to die last night. This is better." Jack nodded once, then started the engine again. The day stretched out, long sun-bleached miles across Colorado plains. They crossed the state line around late afternoon. The clouds broke apart, revealing a sky so big it looked like forgiveness. Katie leaned her head against the glass and watched it pass. Jack couldn't shake the feeling of eyes somewhere behind them. He'd seen too many hunters in his time to mistake quiet for safety. By evening, the light was going gold, and the Rockies rose up far in the distance, purple at the base and silver at their crowns. Denver sat beyond that range, patient and waiting. He was about to say something when the CB crackled to life. Breaker 19, Limestone, you out there? Jack blinked. Mouthpiece Mike. He picked up the mic. Go ahead, Mouthpiece. You're a long way from home. Brother, I've been hearing some chatter, Mike said, his voice more serious than usual. A state trooper out of Amarillo put a bolo out. Couple of folks in a semi. Says the girl's a kidnapping suspect, armed and dangerous. Driving with a man in his 40s, freightliner with Nevada plates. Sound familiar? Jack's stomach went cold. Katie looked up, reading his face before he said a word. That's bull, Jack said into the mic. She's the victim, not the suspect. I figured, Mike said. But you know how fast stories twist once the uniforms get hold of them. Listen, Limestone, if you're northbound, you best lay low. Don't hit any way stations or truck stops with cameras. They'll be watching. Jack rubbed a hand over his jaw. Appreciate it, Mouthpiece. You didn't hear from me. 10-4. Keep the rubber side down, brother. And watch your mirrors. The line went dead. Katie's eyes were wide. They think I kidnapped someone? Jack nodded grimly. That's what he wanted. Flip the story, make sure if anyone sees you, they run toward him. She buried her face in her hands. They'll never believe me. They don't have to, Jack said. They just have to not find us. He checked the side mirror. The highway behind them glowed with sunset. For the first time since dawn, he could see his own reflection there, and the faint glimmer of another pair of headlights cresting the rise far back. He said nothing. Katie lifted her head. Jack, what is it? Nothing, he lied. Eat your sandwich. We've got a long way to go. As the sun sank behind the mountains, the road ahead turned to gold, and the shadows behind them lengthened like fingers reaching for the back of the truck. By the time they hit Pueblo, night had rolled back over the Rockies like a black tide. The air grew colder, thinner, the kind that bit through denim and reminded a man how high the ground could get in this part of the world. The interstate climbed steady and long, the engines hummed the only sound between them. Jack had cut the CB hours ago. Too many voices, too much noise. He didn't trust it now, not after that warning from Mouthpiece Mike. The thought of being a name on a bolo, armed and dangerous, stuck in his chest like a nail. Katie was awake again, quiet but alert. The girl had gone from terrified to watchful in a way that impressed him. There was something in her, a backbone that had learned to grow while the rest of her was still figuring out how to survive. You been here before? She asked softly, eyes on the dark mountains ahead. Colorado? Once, Jack said. Delivered equipment up to a mining site outside Leadville. You learn two things quick. The air's thin, and the locals don't like strangers asking questions. Katie gave a small, tired smile. Then we'll fit right in. Jack grinned despite himself. You're picking up the trucker's sense of humor. Guess it's contagious. They passed a sign for Colorado Springs. Jack hesitated. His fuel gauge was slipping low, but he didn't want a traceable stop. He'd been using cash since Amarillo, old bills he kept in a tin under the passenger seat. Years of solitude had taught him to trust paper and distrust cards. As the road wound north, he spotted a small diner ahead. Neon flickering weakly, a few rigs parked crooked in the gravel lot. Betty's Grill. Open 24 hours, the sign claimed, though the lights told a different story. He pulled in anyway. Katie tensed. You sure it's safe? No such thing, Jack said. But people notice a truck that never stops more than one that does. Inside, the diner smelled like grease and rain. A waitress in her 50s with tired hair and a heart-shaped name tag looked up from the counter. "Coffee?" she asked automatically. "2," Jack said, "and a couple slices of whatever pie's still got a heartbeat." Katie slid into a booth across from him. The walls were covered in faded Polaroids. Truckers, locals, kids holding fishing trophies. Above the register hung an old license plate that read, "No Place Like Road." The waitress poured coffee, then leaned on the counter, eyeing Jack. "Haven't seen you through here before." "First time," Jack said, "headed north." "Where to?" "Denver," he said, too easily. She nodded, unconcerned. "Storm's moving in that way. Snow by morning, they're saying." Jack gave a polite smile. Wouldn't be the first. Katie stirred her coffee without drinking it. Her hands shook just enough for him to notice. "You all right?" he murmured. "Yeah, just... it's weird, being inside. Feels too normal." Jack looked out the window. His Freightliner sat alone under the dim light, exhaust curling white. Beyond that, just the dark, endless road. "Normal's the best camouflage there is," he said. "You start looking too scared, people start noticing." Katie nodded. She pushed the pie around with her fork but didn't eat. "I can't stop thinking about that guy, the way he smiled when he saw me, like he already knew how the story ended." Jack's jaw tightened. That kind of man thinks everything's a rerun, until it's not. The waitress came by with a check. Jack paid cash, left a tip big enough to make him memorable for generosity, not suspicion. When they stepped back outside, the night had deepened into full black. He froze halfway to the cab. The truck door was slightly ajar. Katie saw it too. "You locked it, right?" Jack didn't answer. He motioned for her to stay behind him and eased closer. The gravel crunched under his boots, loud as gunfire in the quiet. He reached the cab, gripped the handle, and yanked it open fast. Nothing. Empty seat. The smell of diesel and cold air. But something had changed. The glove box hung open. His logbook was gone. He swore under his breath. Katie's voice came low and sharp. "What does that mean?" "It means they're close," Jack said. "And now they know our plate number, maybe more." He climbed in, slammed the door, fired up the engine. The Freightliner roared awake, headlights spearing through the dark. Gravel sprayed as he pulled out of the lot. Katie twisted in her seat, watching the diner vanish behind them. "So, what do we do?" "We stop thinking like truckers," Jack said. "Start thinking like ghosts." They drove in silence for miles. The mountains grew blacker, the air colder. At last, Katie whispered, "You ever kill anyone, Jack?" The question hit him like a downshift. That's a hell of a question. You just seem like someone who's done things he doesn't talk about. Jack's hands tightened on the wheel. "There was a wreck once, years ago. I was driving nights for a construction outfit out east. Another driver cut across, too tired to think straight. I braked too late. He didn't walk away. Sometimes I see the look he had right before the hit, like he knew it was me." Katie was quiet. "That's not the same as killing someone. Try telling my sleep that." They fell silent again, the hum of the engine filling what words couldn't. By the time they hit Monument Hill, the snow had started. Thin, dry flakes that glowed in the beams before dying on the windshield. Denver lay another hour north, crouched behind the storm. Katie's phone buzzed suddenly. Jack's head snapped around. "You said it was gone." "It was," she said, panicked. She dug through the hoodie pocket and froze. A phone, black, unfamiliar, still damp from rain. "That's not mine." Jack took it gently, turned it over. No lock screen, just a single open text thread. The latest message blinked on the display. GPS active. Target moving north on I-25. Confirm visual. Jack cursed and flung it out the window into the snow. They planted it when they opened the cab. Katie's voice trembled. So they're tracking us? They were, Jack said. Not anymore, but we're out of time. He pushed the throttle, the Freightliner surging forward through falling snow. What do we do now? Katie asked. We vanish, Jack said. I know a place up near Castle Rock. Friend of mine's got a yard there. No questions, no cameras. We hole up till morning, then figure the rest. Katie nodded, though her eyes said she didn't believe in safe places anymore. Outside, the snow thickened. The mountains loomed like old gods, silent and waiting. And somewhere behind them, through the white blur of night, headlights appeared again, low, slow, and steady. They were being followed once more. Snow fell harder by the mile, thick flakes slanting across the windshield like torn pages from the sky. The Freightliner plowed north, its tires whispering against a road gone half white, half memory. Jack kept his grip loose but ready, eyes flicking between the mirrors and the faint yellow lines fighting to stay visible. Behind them, the lights were still there. Steady, patient, never too close, never too far. Whoever was driving knew the game. Stay in the dark, let the quarry tire itself out. Katie hadn't said a word since Jack tossed the phone out the window. She stared at the blur outside, lips pale, hands wrapped tight around the edge of her seat. How much farther? She asked finally. 15 miles, Jack said. Give or take. He glanced at her. You holding up? I've been worse, she said. At least this time someone's on my side. Jack gave a soft snort. Don't bet too heavy on me, kid. I'm just a man with a truck and a few bad decisions. That's more than I had yesterday. They rolled past a snow-covered sign. Castle Rock, exit 382. Jack flicked on the turn signal. He knew the place well enough. A buddy of his from long-haul days, Sam Laird, owned a repair yard on the edge of town. Sam had been military once, then a mechanic, then a man who trusted engines more than people. The kind of friend who didn't ask where you'd been, just whether you needed gas or sleep. The exit ramp curved down toward a small industrial strip, all dark warehouses and chain-link fences. Jack turned onto a narrow service road, following a line of dim sodium lamps until the world narrowed into silence. There, he said, nodding toward a wide metal gate with a faded sign, Laird Diesel and Storage. He reached out the window, punched a code into the rusted keypad. The gate buzzed, then creaked open like something waking from a dream. Katie looked around nervously. You sure your friend's here? He's the kind who never really leaves, Jack said. He pulled the Freightliner inside, shut the gate behind them, and rolled to a stop under a tin awning. The lot was empty except for a row of dead trucks sleeping under snow. A single light burned in a small office at the far end. Jack killed the engine. The sudden quiet felt like falling. Katie exhaled shakily. We safe? For now, he said. Let me talk to Sam. Stay here. Keep your head down. He stepped out, boots crunching in the snow. The air was sharp and full of diesel ghosts. Inside the office, the light came from a bare bulb swinging gently in the draft. Sam Laird looked up from behind a battered desk. He was in his 50s, barrel-chested, face weathered like the hood of an old Ford. Mercer, he said with a grin. I'll be damned. Thought you were running the coast runs. Was, Jack said. Got detoured. Sam poured whiskey into 2 chip mugs. Detours make the best stories. Jack took a sip, felt the burn settle. Not this one. Sam leaned back. You look like you've been dragging ghosts behind you. What's going on? Jack hesitated, then said it plain. I picked up a hitchhiker south of Midland. She's in trouble. Real trouble. Someone's after her, bad people. They followed us this far. Sam's smile vanished. You bring that kind of heat into my yard? I didn't have a choice, Jack said. She'd be dead if I left her there. Sam studied him a moment and then sighed. You always had that savior streak. All right. Park her out back by the blue rig. Nobody'll see it from the road. You two can crash in the bunk room. Appreciate it, Jack said. Don't thank me yet, Sam said. If someone comes knocking, I don't plan on playing hero. Wouldn't expect you to. Jack went back outside, motioned for Katie to follow. She climbed down stiffly, the snow soaking her sneakers. This the friend? She asked quietly. Yeah, we can rest here a bit. Sam appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a rag. This the girl? Katie nodded, wary. I'm not trouble. Sam grunted. Everyone who says that usually is. Jack shot him a look. She's been through enough. Sam shrugged and led them to a small outbuilding at the back of the yard. Inside, the air was warm from an old space heater. 2 narrow bunks, a table, a coffee pot that might have been older than any of them. It's not fancy, Sam said, but it's off the radar. Katie looked around and sat on the lower bunk. It's perfect. Sam lingered at the door. You want me to run a sweep on your rig? Make sure nobody planted another tracker? Jack nodded. Please. When he was gone, Katie finally exhaled. You trust him? Enough, Jack said. He's a good man, just allergic to risk. She rubbed her arms. Do you think they'll find us? Jack hesitated. They'll look, but they won't come straight here, not yet. They don't know we ditched their phone. Katie looked up. And when they do, then we'll be gone again. She smiled faintly. You talk like you've done this before. Jack didn't answer. When Sam returned, his expression was grim. You had a tracker, all right. Wired under the rear fender. I smashed it, but whoever's running this show, they're organized. Law enforcement? Jack asked. Sam shook his head. No badge work? Private. The kind of crew that gets paid to clean up problems quietly. Katie went pale. That's them. They said I was property, like they owned me. Jack's hands tightened into fists. Not anymore. Sam looked between them, then poured himself a drink. You're sitting on a hornet's nest, Mercer. You plan on swatting or running? Running, Jack said. Until she's safe. Sam grunted. Safe's a moving target, friend, but I'll give you a head start. He handed Jack a set of keys. Old Ford pickup, back of the lot. Tank's half full. Won't win any races, but it's invisible. Jack nodded. Appreciate it. As Sam left, Katie stood by the frosted window, staring out into the night. Snowflakes spun in the air like white sparks. You think he's right? She asked softly. About Safe being a moving target? Jack looked at her, something heavy in his chest. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you stop chasing it. They sat in silence for a long while, listening to the heater hum. Outside, the wind picked up, and somewhere beyond the fence, a truck door slammed. Jack froze. Katie whispered, "What was that?" He motioned for her to stay quiet, stepped to the window, and peered out through the frost. Headlights, low, creeping, rolled to a stop outside the gate. A black SUV. Jack's breath went cold. They found us. He reached for his jacket. We're leaving, now. Katie grabbed the backpack she'd found earlier, her fingers trembling. Jack, what if... No what ifs, he said. Move. They slipped out the back door into the snow, breath visible, hearts loud. The Ford waited where Sam said it would, frost thick on its windshield. Jack turned the key, engine coughed once, then roared to life. Behind them, the gate creaked open. The SUV's headlights cut through the storm like knives. Jack slammed the truck into gear. "Hold on, Katie." They tore out into the night, the snow swallowing the sound of their tires as the first gunshot cracked through the cold. Snow fell so thick it blurred the world into a single white breath. Jack's hands gripped the wheel, his eyes narrow and sharp, feeling rather than seeing the road beneath them. The old Ford bucked on the ice, but he held it steady, the rear tires fishtailing just enough to remind him how close death can ride when the weather helps. Behind them, the SUV's headlights knifed through the storm, unwavering. Whoever was driving knew how to hunt in the dark. Katie sat rigid in the passenger seat, one hand braced on the dash. "They're still there," she shouted over the roar of wind. "I see them." Jack's voice stayed calm, but his pulse was pounding against the wheel. "Seatbelt tight. Don't look back too much. Looking back's how people miss the turns." A curve rose out of the snow like a secret. Jack downshifted, guiding the truck through it. The rear end slipped, caught, then steadied again. "Where are we going?" Katie yelled. "Back roads," he said. "There's an old quarry north of here. Sam used to store scrap there. Nobody'll be out tonight. We can buy time." A burst of light flared behind them. The SUV had gained ground, tires throwing up snow like wings. A shape leaned out the passenger window, something metallic glinting. "Down!" Jack barked. Katie ducked. A gunshot cracked. The back window exploded into shards that whipped through the cab like a freezing wind. Jack's world shrank to instinct. Throttle, brake, wheel, breath. He yanked the truck off the main road and onto a narrow service lane that plunged into a gully. The headlights bounced off snow-packed pines, their branches heavy like watching sentries. Another shot rang out, wild and distant. The Ford jolted hard as a tire hit a buried rut, metal screaming as the truck fought for grip. "You hit?" Jack asked. Katie shook her head, breath trembling. "No. You? Still driving, aren't I?" They tore down the lane, snow smothering the world in silence except for the howl of the engine. Jack saw the turnoff to the quarry up ahead, just a dark cut in the hill almost invisible. He killed the headlights. The truck vanished into the storm's throat. The SUV roared past moments later, its beams slicing the dark ahead, hunting ghosts. Jack eased the Ford down a slope, tires crunching softly. They rolled to a stop behind a stack of abandoned concrete blocks, the engine ticking quietly in the cold. He shut it off. The silence afterward was thick as snow. Only their breathing existed. Katie pressed her hands to her face, trembling. "Oh, God. Oh, God, Jack." He reached over, gently pulled her hands down. "You're all right. Breathe with me." Her eyes found his, wide, raw, and wet. "They were shooting at us." "Yeah," he said quietly. "That's how you know you're close to the truth." For a long minute they sat there, listening. No engines, no footsteps. The storm muffled everything. Jack cracked the door open, stepped out into the freezing night. The wind bit through his jacket instantly. He walked to the edge of the ridge. From here he could see the highway, dim through the snow. The SUV was idling a mile away, two small stars of light, waiting, watching. He ducked back into the cab. "They haven't gone," he said. "They're waiting for us to make a move." Katie pulled the hoodie tighter. "Then we wait longer." Jack nodded. "Maybe till dawn. They'll have to refuel before then." She looked out at the dark. "They won't stop. You know that, right? Men like that, They keep coming until there's nothing left to take. Jack's jaw tightened. Then we make sure there's nothing left for them to find. Katie studied him for a moment. You've done this before, haven't you? Not this exactly, but running, hiding, fighting to stay alive. He didn't answer right away. Snow hissed against the windshield. Once, he said. A long time ago. Back when my boy was still small and I thought the world still played fair. I hauled for a guy out of Memphis. Good pay, no questions. One night he had me move a load without paperwork. I didn't ask what was in it. Should have. DEA hit his warehouse the next morning. He vanished. I didn't. Took me 2 years to scrape my name clean. Katie was silent, watching the storm bury their tracks. That's when I learned, Jack said softly. The only safe way to live is to stay moving. Katie leaned her head back, eyes closed. So that's what you've been doing ever since? Pretty much. She gave a small, humorless smile. I guess we're the same then. Jack glanced at her. You didn't choose this. Did you? She asked. The question landed harder than she knew. He looked away, out at the pale shape of the storm. Hours passed in slow, cold quiet. The wind sang across the quarry walls. Katie dozed, head resting against the window. Jack sat still, watching for headlights that didn't come. Near dawn, the snow eased to a thin drift. The world glowed faint blue. He nudged Katie awake. They're gone, he said. She blinked, groggy. You sure? Sure enough. He started the engine. The truck rumbled to life, muffled by snow. He eased it out of hiding, creeping along the ridge until they reached the service road again. The highway ahead was empty. No tire tracks, no sound. Katie exhaled shakily. We made it. Jack nodded. For now. But they'll keep looking. Once they figure we're off the main road, they'll fan out. Then where? She asked. He thought a moment. I know someone in Fort Collins. Used to run dispatch for the company I hauled with. He owes me a favor. Real quiet type. He can get us new papers, maybe help you disappear for good. Katie's eyes met his. You'd do that for me? I don't half-finish things, Jack said. She smiled faintly, something soft behind the exhaustion. I think your son got his stubbornness from you. Jack chuckled once. That or his mother? She never quit on anything. They turned north again, the road unfolding like a clean slate. The sun broke the horizon, pale gold over white fields. For the first time since Texas, Katie let herself believe there might be an end to this. But as the light grew stronger, so did the shadows that followed behind. Because miles back, on a ridge overlooking the quarry, a man stood beside a silent SUV. He was tall, his coat dark as oil, his smile small and patient. He watched the Ford drive away, then raised a phone to his ear. Confirmed, he said. They're headed north again. Keep eyes on the border routes. The girl's priority one. He listened, nodded once. No, she's not alone. The driver's with her. Yeah, the same Mercer who turned us down in Memphis. The man smiled wider, thin and sharp as broken glass. This just got interesting. The morning light came thin and brittle, gleaming over snow-choked fields like frost on a mirror. The Ford's tires hummed a low rhythm against the cracked highway north of Denver. Steam rose from the hood, curling into the cold air like smoke from a quiet prayer. Jack had been driving for hours, his world narrowed to asphalt and instinct. Every few miles, his eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, a habit, not a comfort. So far, the road behind them was empty, but he'd lived long enough to know that empty didn't mean safe. Katie was half asleep beside him, wrapped in a blanket Sam had thrown in the cab before they left Castle Rock. Her lips moved now and then, whispering words from dreams she didn't want to remember. They stopped at a truck plaza just outside Longmont, where a row of semis sat idling under the frozen morning. Jack filled the tank with cash, grabbed coffee, and scanned the lot. No SUV, no strange eyes watching, just tired men and the cold breath of diesel. He climbed back into the cab and handed Katie a steaming cup. "Drink, you'll feel more alive." She blinked awake, accepted it with both hands. "Feels like we've been driving forever." "Almost," Jack said. "You eat anything yet?" "Don't think my stomach would let me." "Try anyway." He passed her a bag of jerky. "You'll need the strength." She chewed obediently, then looked out the window. "Where are we now?" "About an hour from Fort Collins." "And that friend of yours, you really think he can help?" Jack nodded. "If he's still where I last saw him. Name's Ray Jordan. Used to work dispatch for an outfit called Prairie Line. Got out when things went south with the feds. He owes me a favor." Katie studied him. "You've got a lot of friends who owe you favors?" He smiled, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes. "When you spend your life moving freight, you learn the weight of what people can't carry themselves." They got back on the road, heading north. The sky turned slate gray, heavy with new weather. Snow began to whisper again, fine and dry as ash. For a long while they didn't speak. The silence wasn't empty, it was alive, humming with all the things neither of them wanted to name. Then Katie broke it softly. "Jack, I never told you what they wanted from me." He kept his eyes forward. "You don't have to." "I need to," she said. "You risked your life for me. You deserve to know why." Jack gave a single nod. "Then tell it straight." She stared out at the white horizon, her voice low and steady. "I used to work at a biotech lab in Austin. Not some big company, a private contractor. We handled confidential projects for the government and a few others with money. My job was data encryption, keeping research files locked so only the right people could open them." Jack glanced at her. "What kind of research?" "The kind that shouldn't exist," she said. "Human gene editing. Illegal under US law, but somebody was paying to push it anyway. They called it Project Eden. I didn't know much, just bits and pieces. But one night I saw files I wasn't supposed to. Experiment logs. Subjects that weren't volunteers." Jack felt something cold settle under his ribs. "So you ran." "I copied what I could onto a drive and tried to send it to a reporter I knew in Dallas. Never made it. They found me before I hit the state line. Took me, wiped my phone, said if I talked again, they'd disappear me for real." Her eyes glistened in the dim light. "I waited for a chance, and when it came, I ran again. That's when you found me." Jack was quiet for a long moment. "You still got that drive?" She reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out a small USB stick, scuffed and silver. "Right here." He nodded slowly. "Then that's why they're hunting you. You've got proof. And they can't let it see daylight." Katie looked down at the drive, thumb tracing its edge. "I thought maybe if I made it to Denver, I could get it to someone safe. But I don't know who that is anymore." Jack exhaled. "Ray might. He's done work with federal contractors before. Knows people who don't scare easy." Katie gave him a look. "You trust him that much?" "I trust that he doesn't like bullies. That's enough for me." They drove on. The road turned narrower, lined with bare cottonwoods dusted white. Farmhouses appeared and vanished like ghosts behind frost. At the edge of Fort Collins, Jack pulled off onto a side road leading through an industrial park. A sign read, "Jordan Freight and Storage." Letters peeling but still legible. Katie exhaled. So this is him. Yeah, Jack said, parking behind the building. Stay here a minute. He stepped out, boots crunching over snow, and knocked on the office door. After a pause, it opened a crack. A tall, thin man peered out, dark skin, gray beard, eyes sharp as glass. "Mercer," he said, half a smile forming. "Thought you were dead." "Close enough," Jack said. "Need a favor." Ray opened the door wider, ushering him in. "You always do." The office was cluttered with maps, radios, and a smell of old paper. Ray leaned against the desk. "Talk." Jack told him everything, or enough of it. The girl, the men, the trackers, the gunshots, the drive. Ray listened without interrupting, his expression carved from stone. When Jack finished, Ray rubbed his temples. "You know what you're carrying, right? That's not just blackmail material, that's classified. If it's what she says it is, they'll burn cities to get it back. Then we get it to someone who can keep it safe," Jack said. Ray studied him, then nodded slowly. "I might know a contact in Boulder. Works freelance for Homeland, off the books. He can verify the data, maybe get her protection." Jack felt a flicker of relief. "Can you reach him?" Ray crossed to an old radio terminal, fingers flying across switches. "Give me an hour." When they stepped back outside, Katie was still in the cab, watching the road behind them. Her eyes met Jack's, questioning. "It's okay," he said. "Ray's making a call. We might finally have a way out." But even as he said it, a low rumble reached his ears, the kind of sound you feel before you hear. A convoy of black SUVs was turning into the industrial park, their engines deep and synchronized. Jack's blood froze. "How?" Katie started. "They found us," Jack said. Again. Ray appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. "Mercer, cameras across the lot just went dark. You got company." Jack grabbed Katie's arm. "Back inside now." They bolted for the office as the first SUV skidded to a stop in the snow. Doors flew open. Men in dark coats spilled out, silent, armed, professional. Ray pulled a rifle from behind the desk. "Guess this is one of your famous detours." Jack cracked a grin that didn't belong on any sane man's face. "Yeah," he said, "the kind that changes the map." Outside, boots hit the snow. Shadows moved. The sound of safety switches clicked in unison. Katie clutched the flash drive, eyes wide. "Jack, I know," he said. "Hold tight." And then the world exploded into light and gunfire. The first bullet shattered the office window. Glass rained across the desk as Ray dove behind a filing cabinet, dragging the rifle with him. Jack threw Katie down, covering her with his body as another round punched through the drywall above them. "Stay down," he barked, voice raw. Ray racked the bolt and returned fire, the rifle's crack echoing off metal walls. Outside, men shouted orders, clipped, military. Boots thudded against snow. Jack peered through the corner of the broken window, 4 men fanning out, one circling toward the rear entrance. "Ray," Jack said, "how many exits?" "2, front and back, both bad ideas." "Figures." Jack crawled to the desk, grabbed a heavy wrench from the floor, the same kind of tool that had kept him alive in darker times. "Cover me." Ray nodded. 3 o'clock window, left flank. Go. Jack burst up, shoved the side window open, and slipped out into the freezing air. He landed in the snow with a grunt, rolling behind a row of oil drums. His boots sank half an inch into slush, his breath a cloud. He moved low, fast, circling behind the nearest SUV. The attackers were organized. Tactical vests, suppressed rifles, radio earpieces. Not cops, not even mercenaries. This was a retrieval team. One of them rounded the vehicle, scanning the shadows. Jack rose silent, swung the wrench once, hard. Metal met bone with a dull crack. The man dropped without a sound. Jack grabbed his weapon, checked the mag, full, and slung it over his shoulder. Inside the office, Ray fired again. A shout answered, then silence. Jack sprinted back toward the door, slammed it shut behind him. They're flanking both sides. 2 down, at least 4 left. Ray's face was grim. They're cutting the power next. They want you alive, her dead, and me inconvenient. Katie was crouched in the corner, clutching the flash drive. Jack, they'll burn the place down. Not if they don't know where we are. He scanned the room, brain running faster than his pulse. The office was old, patched together from steel and plywood. One good hit and it'd fold like cardboard. Ray, basement still open? Ray's eyes widened. You remember that? I remember everything that can save me. Trapdoors behind the shelving. Leads to the old freight tunnel. Go, Jack ordered. Ray and Katie crawled toward the corner. Jack stayed at the door, rifle ready, listening. The gunfire outside stopped. That was worse. A new sound replaced it, the crunch of boots moving closer, slower. Someone was giving hand signals. Jack, Ray hissed. Come on. Jack waited 1 heartbeat longer, then 3. When he heard the metallic ping of a grenade spoon popping, he moved. He dove for the trapdoor just as the world erupted in white flame and deafening thunder. The blast ripped through the office, throwing him hard down the steps. Dust and smoke filled the narrow tunnel below. Katie was coughing, her hand gripping the rail. Ray helped her steady. Jack landed on one knee, ears ringing. Everyone alive? Barely, Ray said. That was military grade. They're not playing anymore. Above them, footsteps pounded across the broken floorboards. Voices shouted through the static haze. Jack motioned down the tunnel. Move. The passage sloped into darkness, a concrete artery that smelled of rust and cold earth. The dim light from above faded with every step. Katie stumbled once. Jack caught her arm. You good? I'll live, she whispered. They reached a cross-section where old rail lines split in 2. Jack checked the markings on the wall. Faint, spray-painted letters from some forgotten shipping company. Left goes toward the river. Right hits the rail yard. Which one's open, Ray? Left. The right tunnel collapsed years ago. Then we go left. Behind them came a faint echo. Boots dropping into the tunnel. They're coming, Katie said, voice shaking. Jack turned, rifle ready. Ray, keep moving. Find that exit. I'll buy us a few seconds. Ray hesitated. You sure? Jack met his eyes. I'm still breathing, aren't I? Ray nodded once, grabbed Katie's arm, and pulled her into the dark. Jack stayed where the tunnel bent, breathing slow. He'd fought before, not wars, not battles. But he knew the rhythm of men chasing death. Overconfident, loud, predictable. He waited until he saw the first flashlight beam cutting through dust. Then he aimed and fired once. The light shattered. Screams echoed. Rounds answered, chewing the wall near his head. He dropped to one knee, fired again, controlled bursts. He didn't need to kill them all, just slow them down. When the magazine clicked empty, he tossed the rifle aside and ran. The tunnel opened suddenly into the river culvert, a wide, icy expanse where thin daylight dripped through grates above. Ray was prying open a rusted maintenance door with a crowbar. Katie stood beside him, hands shaking but ready. "Hurry!" she shouted. Jack sprinted the last 20 feet, boots sliding on wet concrete. He shoved the door with his shoulder, metal groaning before it finally gave. Cold morning light spilled through. They stumbled outside, into a drainage ditch lined with reeds and snow. The air smelled of iron and freedom. Ray slammed the door shut behind them, wedging the crowbar through the handle. "That'll slow them." Jack bent over, catching his breath. "We need wheels." Ray pointed toward a chain-link fence ahead. Beyond it sat a row of abandoned maintenance trucks. Those still have fuel. Government forgot about them years ago. Jack grinned. Then it's their lucky day. They climbed the fence, boots slipping on ice. Jack found a truck that still had keys in the visor. The engine sputtered, then caught, coughing gray smoke. As they pulled away, the maintenance door behind them burst open. Black-clad figures spilled into the ditch, weapons raised. Jack floored the accelerator. The truck lurched forward, fishtailing through the snow as bullets snapped past. Ray looked back. They're not stopping. Didn't expect them to. Jack's jaw was steel, but they just made a mistake. "What's that?" Katie shouted over the roar. They came after a man who's got nothing left to lose. They tore out onto the river road, tires throwing up mud and snow. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew fainter. But Jack knew it wasn't over. It never was. He checked the rearview mirror one last time. The smoke from the explosion still rose behind them, curling up into the pale morning sky like a promise. He shifted gears, eyes forward. "Ray, call your contact in Boulder. Tell him we're coming in hot." Ray nodded, fumbling for his radio. Katie turned to Jack, voice low but steady. "What if this doesn't work? What if they find us again?" Jack gave a small, weary smile. "Then we stop running." She stared at him. "And do what?" His eyes were hard as road steel. "We fight." Boulder sat under a low sky, the flat irons like a fist pressed up against the horizon. The city smelled of wet stone and hot coffee as they rolled in. Headlights catching brick facades and an early bustle of morning commuters. Jack kept the truck tucked behind a rental van on a narrow side street, while Ray made a call with hands that trembled just enough to show the night had not been kind. "Eli's out front," Ray said when he climbed back in, breath fogging like a small, nervous animal. "Old theater on Pearl. Says to meet in the loading dock. He's got a van. White, no markings. He'll want a quick handoff." Jack nodded. He felt the weight of the flash drive in Katie's pocket like a clock that had already begun its last minute. "No cops, no press. Keep it tight." Katie smoothed the blanket around her shoulders and stared at the brick wall opposite, as if she could will it to swallow trouble whole. "Do you think Eli can help? Really?" Ray shrugged. "Eli knows people who can talk to the right people without the wrong ones listening. He won't take it lightly, but he's the cleanest route we've got." They slipped into the theater's narrow service alley, the old marquee above a faded welcome like a relic from a kinder America. A white van with its engine idling shadowed the loading dock. A man with a messenger bag stepped out, lean, late 30s, one eyebrow tattooed with a single ring of gray hair at his temple. Eli Navarro's smile was quick and weary. "You must be the ones from the snow," Eli said. "Ray? Mercer? Thought I smelled diesel on the wind." Jack gave a short nod. "We need to get this to someone who can make it matter." Eli's eyes dropped briefly to the pocket where Katie had been hiding the drive. He moved with the careful swiftness of someone who had moved dangerous things for a living. Inside. Now. The loading area was an old backstage warren, caked ropes, a scent of old wood, and a flickering strip of fluorescent that painted everything a jaundiced yellow. Eli set up a cheap laptop and a mobile hotspot, eyes moving like a conductor's. I'll do a dry verify, check hash values, see if the files look intact. If it's what you say, we need to seed it to multiple repositories at once. Journalists, watchdog groups, the right federal people. Katie handed him the drive with a hand that trembled but did not break. They'll come for it, she said, voice small and fierce at once. They'll come for me. They'll come for all of us if this is real, Eli said. That's why we move fast. Eli's fingers flew over keys. The laptop hummed, the hotspot light blinked like a heartbeat. Jack watched the street outside through a high, narrow window. Cars flowed like thin beads of oil. A bicyclist cut across a crosswalk. For a moment, the world behaved like a place that would not understand the kind of violence that had chased them. Then a shout split the air. Footsteps thundered on the pavement outside, like someone had decided to rehearse an apocalypse. Metal hit metal. Ray's head snapped to the window. They found us, he said. Eli did not flinch. 2 minutes. If they came in hard, they'll expect a bunker, Biggs teams, suppressed rifles. They won't expect a theater crew. The loading door rattled. Voices, rough and low, ordered them to come out. A single figure stepped into the dock light. Tall, dark-coated, a smile that had killed small things. Jack had seen that smile on a ridge in the snow, the man who had coordinated the longer hunt. He had given himself a name back in Memphis. Now men with names like clean-suited ghosts pulled his strings. Jack had started calling him Crow in his head, because crows come when storms do. You can save yourselves, Crow said through a speaker as the door creaked. Turn the child over and we leave without blood. Katie's hand tightened around the drive. Her jaw trembled and then set. You don't get to call me that, she said. Crow laughed, short and cruel. It's not a name you'd pick. It's a destiny someone else wrote for you. Eli's fingers paused, then returned to the keys. The laptop screen flashed progress bars. 40%, he said. Keep them talking. Delay them. Jack stepped into the dock, hands open and empty like a man trying to signal he knew about rules he would break. We don't want trouble, he called out. Just go. Take the drive if you... Crow barked a laugh. We take you. The drive is collateral. We don't let loose viruses without first proving containment. One of Crow's men pushed forward, heavy boots crunching on gravel. Jack tensed. He could smell the gun oil on their coats. You want her alive? He said. You'll have to take me first. Crow's eyes studied him like a predator checking a bone. You're sentimental, Mercer. Sentiment costs time. He turned to his men, and the dock filled with motion. Black vests, weapons raised, the choreography of professionals. Eli slammed the laptop closed and shoved the rig toward the side. You'll have to get it out of me first, he said, voice low as the drum of a snare. He pushed a brick of a prop case toward Jack. Go. Now. Jack grabbed Katie and Ray and shoved them through a side corridor that stank of old paint. Head for the alley, he hissed. Eli, get it out fast. The corridor vomited them into a narrow street behind the theater. Jack hid them beneath the overhang of a delivery bay as a salvo of flashbangs popped inside. Thin white light ripping the dark into scared shapes. Somewhere behind the wall, Eli's voice rose into a raw shout. Men barked in the dock, then sudden, brittle gunfire. Jack felt his blood push against his temples. He knew what happened to men who gave ground in these games. He remembered the rest area in West Texas, the roar of trucks, the way the rain had felt like a mercy. He thought of his son somewhere by the Pacific, sending photos that were small islands of normal. He thought of every place that had pretended not to see the things that lived behind other people's silence. He ran. He rounded the corner toward the dock, heart beating, lungs burning. The loading bay was a theater of chaos, smoke, splintered wood, and men crouched like birds of prey. Eli was on the floor, a welt already swelling on his temple, laptop gone from the table. Crow stood by the edge of the broken dock, his hand on Katie's shoulder like an owner marking property. Katie's face was white with fear, but she met Jack's eyes with a steadiness that steadied him. Ray sprang from behind a trash bin and then leapt at a man's flanking position, struggling. Jack threw himself into the fray with the bluntness of a man who had nothing more precise to offer. They fought like men who had learned how to use the world as a weapon. It was ugly and close and smelled of rust and diesel and something older. Regret. A shot rang out and a heat licked the rafters. Someone screamed. Then the theater's old wiring, dry and brittle, caught. A fan of flame licked the curtains. The fire found the old paint and ate like an animal that had been hungry a long time. "Move," Jack shouted. "Get Katie out." They pushed toward the rear exit. Crow's men tried to form a line, but the theater's narrow corridors turned their strength into confusion. Smoke rolled in like a tide, and the heat bit through winter coats. Eli coughed, grabbing at the fallen laptop. "It's not," he choked. "It's not done yet." Jack caught him by the collar and yanked him up. "Shut it and run." Through the haze, Jack saw Crow raise his hand, like a man who had the authority to end small things quickly. A gun rose, aimed at Katie. Time stretched like wet rope. Katie moved faster than her fear should have allowed. She ducked, twisting toward a side stairwell, elbowing past one of Crow's men as if the body had become a thing to avoid on a crowded street. The gun barked. The bullet clipped metal, ricocheted into a light fixture. Sparks rained like a minor constellation. They spilled out into the alley, coughing, lungs burning, faces slick with sweat and soot. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Late commuters, a bicyclist frozen mid-ride. Shocked faces turned toward the theater. Someone had already called emergency services. Crow stood in the doorway, coat smoking at the hem. He looked absurdly small amid the chaos. He laughed once, high and brittle, and then pushed back into the theater as firefighters began to arrive. Jack grabbed Katie's hand and ran. Ray followed, arm over his shoulder. The sirens came as a wail of civilization reclaiming the street, red and blue bleeding into the smoky air. Crow melted into the dark before the police lines thickened. He was not the kind to be held when flames did the work for him. Eli staggered out a minute later, coughing, the laptop clutched like contraband. He shoved it into Jack's hands. "Here," he said. The temporary seeds went out. Code forks to 3 journalists and an independent watchdog. The rest, thank God, started to replicate before they yanked the node. I got hashes to verify. We bought time. Jack looked down at the battered laptop, at the plainness of a plastic case that had just carried the future. He felt a strange split of relief and dread. "Did it stick?" he asked. Eli met his eyes, exhaustion written into the set of his mouth. "Some of it. Enough to matter. They'll try to bury it, they always do. But a seed's in the ground now. People will pull at it." Katie sank to a curb, shaking. She held the flash drive in both hands like a talisman. "Is it out? Is it safe?" "For now," Eli said. "But not for long. Once those men reorient, it'll be a blood hunt. He looked up as police officers began to fan out, questions already on their lips. Mercer, Ray, get out. Lay low. Let me handle the trace cleanup. You did good. Jack folded himself around the pain that had been living under his ribs all week. What about you? He asked. Eli smiled a quick, almost bitter smile. I'll make a call. I'll say you were transient actors, that the theater's wiring caused everything. They'll buy a version of the story. It's what they always buy. The firefighters pushed the blaze back, but the smoke kept on leaving, long and disagreeable. Crow's men had vanished into the city like the fog into which they had been born. But Jack knew that was not the end. They had lit a warning in the dark. Ray helped Katie to her feet. We got 3 hours, he said. Maybe 4. Then they'll recalibrate. Jack looked at the theater's blackened mouth, at the way the crowd clustered like witnesses in rumors. He felt the shape of something final tightening in his chest, an inevitability that can be fought but not wished away. We keep moving, he said. We go south. We buy as much distance as we can before they come for us again. Katie nodded, face set like something carved from stone. And the drive? Ray looked at the small drive in her hand. You keep that. It's the lever. He checked his phone and handed it to Eli. You ready to deliver it to the right hands if we can't? Eli pressed the phone to his ear. I'll do what I can. Jack's phone buzzed in his pocket. One short message from his son. Hey, Pops, check in when you can. He thumbed a reply that said on the road and then deleted it. There were things a son did not need to carry. They moved away from the crowd like ghosts after a sprint. The fire's heat lingered in their lungs for a long time. Behind them, in the wrecked husk of the theater, Crow watched the smoke twist toward the sky. He spoke into a sleeve. They spilled it. Clean up what you can. Make sure the seed gets choked. His voice was small and efficient. And find Mercer. He's the last loose thread. He snapped his phone shut, the man who could not abide unfinished business, and walked into the frozen city as if the cold could erase the warmth of the fire. Jack felt the world tilt under his feet. He had stolen a future out of a bunker and handed it to the street. He had set fire to the thing that hunted them, and in doing so, had lit a beacon that could burn brighter than they intended. Tomorrow, Eli said quietly. Tomorrow we'll plan a real move. Jack wrapped his coat tighter and looked at Katie, at the raw, brave set of her mouth. Tomorrow, he agreed. He did not yet know whether tomorrow would be the end of the road or the place they finally learned to stand and fight. But for the first time in many nights, he let himself imagine sunrise that would not be chased by gunfire. The city kept its distance like an old friend who did not quite forgive. Boulder's ash drifted in the gutters where morning traffic still hesitated, and the world felt small and bruised, like a fist that had been unclenched too quickly. Jack woke before dawn, the smell of smoke still clinging to his coat, and listened to the quiet like a man who had learned that silence can be both an enemy and a shield. They had spent the night in a cheap motel off the highway, faces smudged with ash, 3 people pressed into a single room that felt too small for the weight of what they carried. Ray kept close to Katie, watching for patterns in the way a city breathed. Eli slept like a man who had rebuilt a bomb, only to discover he had no place to put it safely. Jack lay awake and counted echoes, of rest-stopped radios, of glass on gravel, of the way a woman's voice could keep you moving when the road itself wanted to stop. They had a plan, the kind men make when hope is running thin. Go north to the mountain town, Eli suggested. Meet an off-the-books contact who could act as both firewall and shepherd. And then, if the stars and the luck aligned, hand the evidence to people who would not bury it for the right price. That plan relied on speed, secrecy, and favors owed in corners of the country where paper was thin and memory was long. But plans are things you hold until you have to perform a miracle. They had already burned one down with flame and noise. They did it because something in Katie insisted that truth should not be private property, that some things belonged to the light. At breakfast, Katie took the last of a paper cup of coffee and ran cold fingers through her hair. Her face looked younger in the soft morning, as if the fire had X'd out some years and returned the rest to daylight. "Are you sure about this?" she asked Jack. He watched her for a long moment, the quiet between them a small private treaty. "I'm sure about the only thing that matters," he said. "We see it through so you don't have to run anymore." She blinked, tears held back by a lip that trembled like someone learning a new language. "Why'd you help me?" she asked, plainly, as if asking anything else would have been a betrayal. Jack turned the question like a coin in his hand. "Because once I stopped pretending the road was uninvolved, I realized no one else was going to keep the promises I can't keep to myself. Because my boy trusted me once. Because I needed to do something that wasn't just putting miles between me and what I'd done wrong. Because some favors you don't calculate, you pay them." They left before the motel's coffee machine finished its cycle. The van they borrowed from Eli was clean and anonymous, a bright white rectangle that looked for all the world like nothing at all. Ray sat in the passenger seat and watched the mirrors with the earnestness of a man who had once been a dispatcher and still measured time in routes and windows. Katie rode in the back, the drive cupped like a small stone in her palm, its edges worn smooth by fear and faith. Eli drove them into the hills, roads that climbed and wound and smelled of pines and leftover winter. The mountains changed everything. The cold made people honest again, or perhaps it simply took the edge off the city's appetite for ruin. They met the contact in a low building that had the look of things that had outlived many plans. A clinic burned white by altitude and thrift, staffed by a woman who had once worked in government and then made a profession of bending rules to save people who could not be saved otherwise. Her name was Marisol Vela. She was all hard hands and soft eyes, a woman who kept both scalpel and oath in the same drawer. She listened as Katie told the story in a voice that was small and precise. When Katie finished, Marisol's fingers tapped the desk once, twice, like a question mark being sent. "This is radioactive," she said. "If what you have is true, you're not just whistleblowers. You're witnesses to a crime wave with access to private money and private labs and people who will bury this in very deep places. Are you prepared for what that means?" Katie inhaled, as if drawing courage from the mountains. "I don't want anyone else to die for what I know." Marisol nodded once. "Then you did right. Now we make the rest of the world do right." They worked in a rhythm that felt like prayer. Secure servers, verified hashes, replicated seeds sent to journalists, nonprofit watchdogs, a handful of trusted federal investigators who owed favors and had clean consciences. It was a small army of dissidents and former bureaucrats who still believed in remedies. Eli handled the technical side, sending the right packets, leaving no traceable nodes, using the kind of prosthetic routing that turned a message into a rumor. Ray moved the logistics, finding places to sleep and shadows to live in. Marisol arranged for temporary protection. False names, a route to a woman in witness relocation who trusted papers more than promises. It took 2 days. It felt like 200. They ran errands that were really rituals, copies of passports that were not really passports, cash exchanges handled through men who had nothing to do with questions, a short trip to the border that was only a test of the air. Crow's men did not stop looking. They were patient in a way that made time itself seem like an accomplice. On the third day, a name came back through a secure line. A prosecutor with a conscience was opening an inquiry. The seed had taken hold. The journalists had begun to pull at threads, and the threads were unspooling names and locations. Word traveled slow but certain. Viral threads lit in dark basements, social media accounts that could not be quashed by a single legal team. The truth had a stubbornness that law and money could not always buy. Crow did not panic. Men like him understand the long game. He changed strategies. Instead of overt violence, he moved toward legal suffocation. Lawsuits, character assassinations, a story that said the whistleblower was mentally ill, and her evidence a fabrication by a disgruntled technician. That was why they needed the prosecutor and the journalists, the corroborations, and the physical evidence that could not be discredited without unspooling dozens of other lies. It became a war of attrition between the public and the private shadows that paid to remain in those shadows. There were court filings and leaks and anonymous articles that called Project Eden a rumor with teeth. There were protests outside a private contractor's office and a quiet raid in a midnight warehouse that discovered vials with unlabeled contents and a dead plant that had once been human tissue. Each discovery was a match struck in a long, dry forest. Jack watched it all from the margins, like a man who had learned to live in the spaces between decisions. He had not sought recognition. He had not wanted to be a hero. He wanted a single small thing: for Katie to sleep without waking to the sound of footsteps on gravel. In those days, he and Katie spoke little. When they did, the conversation was ordinary and sacred. How to boil an egg without a pan warped by travel. Which road to take to a lake that did not mind being far from cities. What to call the dog Katie might get when the world stopped making sense. There were moments of brittle laughter. At how badly Eli dressed for cold weather. At Ray's inability to stop worrying about travel permits. And moments of silence that were not empty. One night, after a press conference had put one of the contractors under an official stain of inquiry, Katie slept in a chair in Marisol's living room. Her hands were unclenched for the first time in months. Jack sat across from her and watched the way her breathing was finally even. "You going to stop driving?" she asked in a voice that still sounded like the thing she was not certain she could call home. Jack smiled that small, weary smile he used when a radio static faded into a clear song. "I think I'll take some short trips," he said. "I'm tired of running for the sake of running." "You could get a place," she said, half of a proposal and half of a dare. "It would be new," he said. "I don't know if I remember how to be still." "You'll learn," she said. "We'll learn together." The cases built like a slow avalanche. Crow's men found themselves subpoenaed. Their shell companies were traced back through a litany of opaque transactions that made accountants uncomfortable. The contractor's board of directors held emergency meetings. Important people fell on their own knives. The public noticed because a few reporters refused to let it be quiet. The prosecutor opened a grand jury. It did not end with fireworks or dramatic televised arrests. It ended in practical, grinding ways. Indictments filed, men who had once smelled of money now smelling of cellulose and prison, laboratories shut down and sealed under court order. Not everyone implicated was brought to justice. Not every secret was fully revealed. Systems are larger than men and survive them. But the structure that had allowed Project Eden to thrive was cracked, and that mattered. Then one morning, in a small courthouse in the state capital, a man who had once called himself Crow appeared for a hearing. He wore a suit that had once been expensive and a face that did not show surprise. Jack watched from the back row, his son at his side. The boy had flown out quietly when he could, someone who had always kept his heart in two places at once. Crow's voice did not tremble when he was asked to answer for his actions. He smiled with the same small, sharp smile he had used for years. The court recorded it, catalogued it, and sent it on like a small stone into a reservoir that would ripple. Afterward, outside the courthouse, Katie hugged Ray. Eli patted Jack's shoulder with the hand of a man who felt relief like manageable pain. Marisol watched them all, an ocean of small, satisfied nods behind her eyes. "You did good," she told Katie, quiet and absolute. "You paid a terrible cost and you made it count." Katie's voice caught. "I didn't do it alone." She turned to Jack, and for a moment she looked like someone with a map who finally found the place she had been searching for. "Thank you." Jack felt something in his chest loosen, like a knot pulling free. He thought of the rest area in Tennessee, of the night he had decided he could no longer be a witness to silence. He thought of the life he had led between Miles and the cheap motel sheets that had once been all he would accept. He felt, for the first time in a long while, an honest promise to himself. The public story swelled and receded. Project Eden became a headline, then an investigation, then a case file. People spoke about ethics and oversight and the things that should never have been allowed. Some named the people responsible. Others went unnamed, slipping into the back alleys of power that had always protected them. But the drive, Katie's small, scuffed talisman, had done its work. It had been a lever, and someone had finally moved the fulcrum. When the work calmed, Katie asked Jack if he'd come out to the edge of town. They walked to a small park that looked over the foothills. A breeze carried the smell of spring, new grass and diesel, and the faint taste of possibility. "How long before the old life feels like a life, not a wound?" she asked. Jack counted the distance between a man and a promise like he counted miles. "Not overnight," he said. "But we get there, one small step at a time." They sat on a bench and watched the sun make the rocks glow. People passed with dogs, with strollers, with errands. The world seemed ordinary and miraculous all at once. "You could stay," Katie said finally, small and steady. Jack looked at her, at a life that had been mostly road and now had a glint of a house in it. He felt his son's text buzzing somewhere in his pocket, a small tether to a boy he had never stopped being proud of. He felt the road under his bones and the city at his feet and the knowledge that nothing he did would ever be perfectly clean. "I'll take some short trips," he repeated, "but I'll be around. I think I earned the right to choose where the road goes next." She leaned her head on his shoulder, the way people do after a long night that ends well. "I think I earned the right to not be afraid anymore," she said. Maybe they both had. Maybe the world had not been healed by their small rebellion, but it had been nudged, pushed, and for a while, that would do. A car passed on the road below and kicked up a spray of gravel. A dog barked, enthusiastic and small. The mountain stood like a promise no one could take back. Jack let himself stay for a moment in the glow of ordinary things. Sunlight on hair, coffee cooling in a paper cup, the sound of a son's laugh in a voicemail he would return later. They had started as strangers in the rain. They had become a messy constellation of people who refused to let an injustice be buried. They had traded miles for a chance at sleep. In the end, the road had taught them the thing it teaches most stubbornly, that every step forward, even the smallest, moves the world a fraction. Jack looked at Katie and saw a life that was not just escape, but arrival. "Where to first?" he asked, without the weight of being chased. She smiled, bright and a little wry. "There's a lake west of here," she said. "No cell service, no surveillance. Boats that don't notice people who look like they've been running." He laughed, a clean sound. "Then let's find their shore." They rose, picking up the small pieces of ordinary life. A backpack, a thermos, a map folded the wrong way, and walked toward a car that would take them not away from something, but toward everything they had fought to save. Outside, the city carried the slow business of living on. Somewhere, legal teams drafted motions, and men who'd once thought themselves safe counted losses. The wheels of power turned, sometimes late and sometimes just, and the sun climbed higher. Jack took one last look at the foothills. Behind him lay roads he had driven for years. Ahead were short trips and new mornings, and a son who still believed in his father. He put an arm around Katie's shoulders and started walking. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support inspires new stories and keeps the road alive.